going to kick things off here with why using a map in the first place. And today we're going to be talking about examples that are relevant to both cities and towns, but also at the higher level, the regional or statewide level. All of these entities have websites and all of them have information that's really valuable for your constituents. So what can we map anyway? And as GIS users, I think there's many of you on this call, we like to think about data as a collection of points, lines, or polygons. And with these geometric representations, we can cover almost all of the physical and built world. But maps are no longer a specialty tool, and they've become an integral part of so many familiar applications that they're almost a language in and of themselves. So we're communicating through this language. And of course, using maps is nothing new. I mean, they've been around since pretty much the dawn of time, but the level of access that the average citizen has and familiarity with them has changed so dramatically in the last few years. We feel government users in particular are sometimes the last to catch up, which is surprising because we work with maps so often in all of the work that we do. So I put together some questions here, things that a citizen might be asking when they're looking for a physical location. And you'll see so many of these have to do not only with where that place is, the kind of thing we can just say a latitude and longitude or more familiar for people like an address, but also the spatial relationships. Where are they in relation to these other places I am going or need to be? And how can I get there? These are now questions that using online mapping tools we can answer, and usually very readily. So let's take a look at what citizens are getting right now. These are screenshots that I pulled from a couple .gov sites and how they're communicating location-based information to citizens. And as you can see, it can be a little underwhelming for those of us that are visual learners in a sense, right? We saw from our registration list that over half the audience today are using maps in some shape or form on their website already, and that's a great place to start. But the reality is that we tend to see them kind of buried in different parts of your site, or maybe not really that public focused map. It's somewhere kind of for more specialty users. And in reality, having a map makes it really easy to communicate exactly where a place is in relation to the user in a way that goes far beyond just an address or a list of addresses like you see here. For example, on the right-hand side, we have a list of recreation facilities in my hometown here. I've lived here for a few years now, and I can tell you just looking at those streets, they're not immediately familiar to me where that is. But looking at a map, I would say, oh yeah, that's right near a place I go all the time. That's great. Similarly, with this list of like COVID vaccination clinics, for someone that might be new to the city or maybe isn't even a native English speaker, having that address there, it sometimes is just words on a page. It doesn't help you understand where it is. So how can we do this better? How can we present information to the public in a way that's actually going to be useful to them to find all these places, answer all these questions? So we put together a couple examples for you that we thought were done really well. This is one that AppGeo helped consult on, but it's a vaccine dose locator that we helped put together for the Pennsylvania Department of Health. And as you can see here, this is a statewide application. We have dots kind of canvassing the state, but what's really helpful here is, clicking on one gives us all that information that could have been given in a list form. But on the upper right, you also see we could find where the user is and just immediately bring the context right to them, centering around where they live, where they work, additionally entering an address and all sorts of additional information that is hard to convey with just a list. So again, here's an example on kind of a larger statewide scale. And going a little more local, this is for Montgomery County in Maryland. They put together a map showing where food assistance is available for residents. And similarly, we have tools like filtering. We can set a radius around the user and just kind of bring it down to that local level. Again, this one was really well done, and we wanted to share it with you because it combines the visual element of the map with that kind of familiar list on the left where we have the address, the phone number, the website, and all of these can work interactively when we're using a digital mapping platform. So I think these do it really well and help answer some of those questions where I can suddenly put into context where all these places are. So going a step further, how can Google Maps platform help? We saw again from our registration, um, just under half of you are actually current Google customers, which is, I was actually surprised we had that many here. So for all of you who have Google in some shape or form within your government agency, this is just a very small next step to get Google Maps up and going. And if you're already using Google Maps, well, then we can give you some ideas to make it even better. But why this platform? There's probably a dozen other platforms out there, and some have been around for a lot longer. So what makes Google Maps special? Well, from the beginning, the Google Maps platform was always about capturing all the data, right? And that's why it's a global platform. It covers practically the whole world. There's over a billion people using it on a monthly basis, and it's updated over 25 million times every day. So more so than just a map, you're basically getting access to this immense knowledge base, this immense data set that is really all encompassing and quite powerful. And that's a lot of what gives it its power. But the other area that I think is easily overlooked is that Google Maps at its core is in so many consumer level products, including the Google Maps app that most of you probably use driving around in your cars. And what that means is that when people pick up an application that's built on Google, the familiarity is immediately there. They don't have to learn something new. It's not going to be intimidating. It's as if they're using the same app they used to order their food delivered the night before, or pick up a Uber. It's becoming second nature to so many people. And that's one of the aspects of the platform that we really can't stress the value enough when you're looking for something that's going to be really easy for the most of your public to pick up and use right away, versus other tools which for the GIS power users, they might make perfect sense, but for the average person it might be a little more of a learning curve. And the last little section I wanted to touch on quickly before going into some more details is that you are tapping into the vast infrastructure that Google has behind the scenes, all of the servers. This is something that really scales globally and has implications for security, but also performance. And applications that AppGeo has hosted within the Google Cloud atmosphere, we have had hundreds of thousands of people access those, sometimes on a daily basis in certain instances, and have no slowdowns, have no crashes. We have not seen another mapping platform that scales that readily to demand. And for critical services, that's key to have in your back pocket. So for the 50% of you or so that are familiar with Google at some level, this might seem like a review, but for the rest of you, I want to quickly give you a sense of what the Google Map platform really is, because most of you are used to seeing maybe Google Earth and the map with all the streets on it, but it's really quite a bit more than that. It's the set of APIs all encompassing within a complete mapping platform. So the visual of the map, the data underneath, and then all of the tools that allow you to interact with that data and tap into it for a whole variety of purposes. So maps, routes, and places are the three pillars of Google Maps platform. And virtually everything you see in the Google Maps app that you probably use in your day-to-day life is available in the platform in a more customized fashion. The difference is now you have lots of control over exactly how the experience is engineered for your users. And this presentation today isn't about getting into the specifics of all these APIs. That's something we can walk you through, or we've covered in previous presentations, but just know that it's a lot more than the map you see on the screen. It's really these API interfaces to access the data, to work with it, and to make it solve your problems. So from here, I want to transition over to Dave's section, where we're going to do a deeper dive into one Locator application that AppGeo was instrumental in putting together. And we're going to walk you through what makes it successful and some lessons that you're going to be able to walk away from today and ideally think about when building applications on your own site, and also some ways that AppGeo can help you get there. So Dave, do you want to take it from here?
I will. Thank you very much, Aaron. Good day, everybody. What we want to look at in this segment is an example of a services locator application that we've built that we can use to communicate some of the key points around taking advantage of Google Maps platform. This is a application we built this past summer for the Northwest Regional Telehealth Resource Center. So they're providing a map, an application, a public website showing about 5,000 medical facilities, telehealth and in-person facilities across 6 states in the northwest part of the country. We built this for them a few months ago. It's up on a public site now. You can see the URL listed there. And we used this to illustrate some best practices. Obviously, we met the client needs and what they wanted to achieve in the user experience. But we also used this to illustrate some best practices around these service locators that, as Aaron has indicated, are so powerful to be part of government websites. So Aaron, if you'll switch over to the live demo, please, we'll take a quick peek. So this is what the user experience starts with. You come up and you see the area of interest, these 6 states. And again, there's about 5,000 medical facilities in the data that's coming into this application. And Aaron's going to start with up in the upper left corner by entering an address. You can either use that icon and it will automatically center the map on the device location, the client device where the user is sitting, or you can key in a town or an address. And as you notice, as he keys that in, he gets suggestions coming from Google. That is the autocomplete API in Google Maps, and he's going to select Boise, Idaho. So that's tapping into the, 200 million places and addresses around the world that Google maintains, as Aaron spoke about earlier. So we're going to automatically center the map around the center of Boise, Idaho, and the default search distance is 5 miles. And you're seeing all of the medical facilities. The default configuration has it showing just the telehealth facility. So over here on the left side, we've got a couple of controls. The first one is the type of visit. So we have telehealth or in-person. And Aaron, if you'll turn on both, please, just so we can see more of those. So again, these are the medical facilities within 5 miles approximately of the center of Boise, Idaho. And if you'll zoom in and just select one of those, you can see that the symbols we've configured, again, following what this client wanted us to do with this application. We've used a couple of different symbols to either represent telehealth facilities or in-person facilities or both. And if you'll, sorry, I missed that. You just select one, you can get a little bit more information about the facility. Very standard type of a locator application. Then if you'll go up and hit the list button, so we have a map view and a list view. And as you saw in the couple of examples that Aaron showed a few minutes ago, this can be configured in different ways. Some clients want to have the list view side by side with the map. This particular client wanted to have it as a separate view, all very simple to do and easy to configure. So when you're looking at this and you see one that is of interest and you want to get the driving directions, that's a pretty common scenario. All you do is hit the little driving icon. If you'll hit one of those, Aaron, please, and it'll come up, it'll switch over automatically to the consumer Google Maps. And we're calling consumer Google Maps where the origin of the route is your location, in this case, the center of Boise, Idaho, and the destination is automatically set to the medical facility that the user selected. So a very simple way to find out how to get there and the driving directions. Now, if you go back to the demo and go back to the map, now let's say that I'm interested in a particular kind of medical service. So over here on the left-hand side, we have another gadget, which is all the services that each facility provides. And let's say I'm interested in a gastroenterology doctor. So we'll select that and the map immediately filters on that. But there are not a lot of choices here around Boise. So why don't we increase our search distance maybe out to 10 miles, and then maybe out to 25 miles, give me a few more choices. And you can see the map is automatically reacting to that. So I can pick one of these and go about using, finding out more information about that particular service. The information that's showing up on this pop-up is coming from the client's database, and that's obviously can be whatever the client wants to portray, or in your case, whatever you want to portray about particular government service facilities. So and hopefully you can get a sense that we tried to make this user experience very simple, very intuitive. You don't have to sort of guess at what to do to find a facility of interest. We've tried to lay it out with that goal in mind. We've also tried to achieve a very high performance in the display time. So Aaron, if you'll change the service to any service, so we'll get a few more out there. And then let's bump up the search distance to 50 miles. So it'll come out and it'll automatically update, then 100 miles, 250 miles, and then finally 500 miles radius around Boise, Idaho. We pretty much see the entire database of about 5,000 facilities. And if you notice, that performance never slowed down. We're always staying under that 1 second mark. And sorry, Aaron, I want to do one more thing. Go back out to 500 miles. And now let's filter and see what kind of performance we get. So now pick gastroenterology, for example, and the map instantly updates. So this thing is a very high performance, which creates a very seamless, natural user experience. And that's one of the things that we wanted to achieve with this particular services Locator app. If we could go back to the slide deck, please. So a couple of things, go ahead forward. So a couple of things that we'd like to highlight with this application that we can help you in building a Google Maps-based services locator for your city, county, state, whatever level of government. So 3 points that we're trying to highlight with this one that we can help you with is, number one is that simple user experience. You really want to declutter your app and make it intuitive. Aaron pointed out earlier that I'm sure all of you have very sophisticated GIS applications, which is great, but they're typically targeted for people who are savvy with GIS. Nothing wrong with that. But when you start to consider applications for your public, then you really need something that's very straightforward, very simple, and in this case, taking advantage of that familiar Google Maps base map and experience. So number one, simple user experiences. Next slide. Number two, you want to make that performance as fast as possible. Again, you don't want any lag, and really you want to achieve a 1 second or less display updates. And as you saw, we were able to do that with this application, even with a database of 5,000 facilities coming in. And those kinds of things are pretty straightforward to achieve. And then the third one. So here's where we really focused in on best practices around Google Maps. Google Maps is a incredibly powerful platform. There's a lot of different ways of achieving autocomplete and mapping and geocoding, all these types of standard capabilities. But there are really smart ways to do it, and then they're not so smart. And so what we tried to use this application to illustrate some best practices, especially around optimization. So one of the things is you really want to avoid is redundant geocoding. Every time a user starts up your Google Maps application, you don't want to be geocoding the same location over and over again. We can help you do that through our consulting and stay within the Google terms of services, because there are some pretty strict rules about that. And obviously, if you can minimize or avoid redundant geocoding, you're going to save money on your Google Maps cost. The second one is on that, if you remember, Aaron keyed in in this case, Bozeman, Montana. He keyed in Boise, and that's an autocomplete. I'm sure everybody is pretty familiar with the idea of when you type in an address, it gives you some suggestions, very popular. Google allows you to do this. It's very powerful. There are multiple ways to do this, and a kind of a default way of doing this, you end up paying a double charge to Google, which is not so good. And there are easy ways to get around that. We can help you avoid the double charges with autocomplete. And then the last one is you really want to minimize the number of Maps API calls where possible in these applications. It's not always possible, just depending on your use case, but for these locators, the application that we built, we're only calling Maps API one time per user session. So we're really minimizing that usage. And all of this is in the interest of two things. One, make the thing as fast as possible, and two, save some money. So in fact, we've kind of profiled what this application would cost on an average basis per user session, and it is well under 3 cents per user session. So it's very economical, and I know that that's very important for government organizations to consider. Next slide, please. Nope, sorry, one more approach. Go back up one. One other thought. We have done this to help, to illustrate what's called a services locator. So this is helping your public, your constituents, find your services. There's another area that we're starting to look into, do some research around that is really interesting, and that is flipping that question around and asking the question, where should you be providing services and where are your services needed? Whether that's medical facilities, whether that's government services of any kind of possibility. We're starting to look at broadband capabilities across the country. Very important and part of this new infrastructure bill that's coming out. It's going to provide more monies for that type of capability. And we're doing this by looking at, for example, the medical facilities across a state and calculating the drive time that one can get to from those medical facilities. So in other words, we've created the ability to show drive time polygons from the medical facilities across the state, and it shows very quickly where the gaps are in terms of medical access. Where can I get to within an hour of every one of these medical facilities? And then we're playing around with the idea of combining that with where is broadband available, especially thinking about telehealth. And we're starting to see the power of using this type of mapping technology to answer questions on where should my government services, where are they needed, where do I need to be thinking about locating them, and where should the infrastructure be improved, such as broadband, in support of government services or services in general. If you're interested in those kind of questions, we'd love to have an opportunity to talk with you about it.